Well, good afternoon, brethren. A word has entered our vocabulary in the past 20 years due to its proliferation on social media called the selfie. Now, a selfie is basically a photo that one takes of oneself and posts up on social media to share with friends. Now, we have a generation growing up in this world today on social media where narcissism is becoming a serious problem. Now, narcissism is a term that means love of the self. And it's derived from a Greek legend about a fellow by the name of Narcissus who fell in love with a reflection of himself that he saw in a pool of water, which is really kind of like a lot of people today who like to take photos of themselves in a mirror, often looking like putting their lips out like a duck, because ducks are just so good looking. Now, we can leverage technology such as the internet to reach more people than ever before with the gospel and do many great things with technology. Now, on the flip side, there can be some unintended negative consequences that technology can have on our walk with God if we're not careful about the use of such technology. Now, today I'd like to briefly look at two of the negative side effects that technology and the internet can have on our values and our walk with God, and what God has to say about how to correct these problems. Now, the first potential problem is that of discontentment. Now, when we compare ourselves with others, we can easily become dissatisfied and discontent in our own hearts. Now, when I was young, we just had to kind of randomly guess that we weren't that popular. Now, today, you can actually measure it. So-and-so got 100 likes and my post only got 2. Now, researchers did a study at 2 college universities, and they had students spend half an hour on Facebook and then surveyed their feelings after about half an hour of just looking on Facebook. Now, what they found is that 1/3 of the students felt significantly depressed, citing envy as the number one emotion that they felt after 30 minutes of just watching Facebook. Now, even with older technology like TV, this can be a problem with ads designed to stir up discontentment that can only be cured by buying the product that they're selling. Ads encouraging us to buy bigger and better cars and houses, shows about celebrities living opulent lifestyles and travelling the world. Now, with TV and Facebook, we can find ourselves comparing our mundane, behind-the-scenes life with other people's highlights reels. Now, we can feed on images of things and people that arouse lust and cause us to have discontentment with what we have and even those that we are with. And that not only can kill our joy, but also destroy our relationships with those that we love. Now, there are 2 qualities that can help us deal with the problem of discontentment. Now, the first quality is that of thankfulness. Now, let's go to Philippians 4 verse 6 and see what the Apostle Paul has to say about this. Now, over in Philippians 4:6, the Apostle Paul writes the following on this point of thankfulness. And I'm going to read this from the Contemporary English Version. Now, he writes, "Don't worry about anything, but pray about everything. With thankful hearts, offer up your prayers and requests to God. Then, because you belong to Christ Jesus, God will bless you with peace that no one can completely understand. And this peace will control the way you think and feel." Now, this inner peace, which is the opposite of restless discontentment, comes from being thankful for all that God has given us and trusting God to provide for our needs when we put our requests to Him. Now, a few verses later in Philippians 4, we read about another quality that is the flow-on effect from having a thankful heart, being content. Now, in verses 12 and 13 of Philippians 4, Paul writes, "I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." Now, it is the power of Christ within us through his Spirit that is the secret of being content in every situation. Now, godliness with contentment is great gain, as it says over in 1 Timothy 6, verse 6. Now, God's promises of a wondrous future in his future kingdom and trusting in his unfailing love for us can help us to defeat the dragon of being worried and discontent with our lot in this life. Now, the second potential problem that modern technology can foster is that of self-centeredness. Now, with the popularity of social media and user-generated content such as Facebook and YouTube, as a society, we're becoming more and more addicted to the immediate affirmation of likes and comments from others. Now, scientists will tell you that it releases a feel-good chemical in our brain called dopamine, and many are addicted to that, and many people are addicted to this immediate feedback. Now, so many people are acting as if they are the centre of the universe and life is all about them. Now, one of my pet hates is seeing too many people at the same time playing with their smartphones, like when you're waiting for a bus or a train. Now, something deep inside me wants to scream out and say, "Get a life, people!" Or, "Why can't you just be content with your own thoughts and daydreams?" Now, when I was in New Zealand, a friend mentioned to me that he worked at a telecommunications company, and he sat in on 3 different meetings with phone companies demonstrating their new phone products. And a phrase that was repeated in each demonstration was that we want them using their phones to be an addictive experience. And boy, have they achieved that in spades. Now, there is that chemical rush that's causing people to be more addicted to social media and the instant affirmation that it brings, as well as not being able to resist looking at their phones when they're actually with real people. Now, one telltale sign that you're addicted to social media is when your cat has its own Instagram account. Now, my cat has her own Facebook photo album, but that's completely different. Now, that's Rowan's cat Peanut, who has his own calendar. But again, that's completely different. Now, I simply can't understand this current generation's love affair with taking selfies. I mean, when I was young, it seemed like most people dreaded having their photo being taken. And it was like pulling hen's teeth, getting everyone I wanted together in a group photo. And of course, we all dreaded having our annual photo taken at our class at school, desperately hoping we didn't look as bad as our licence or our passport photo. Now, studies tell us that the average Facebook user has around about 330 Facebook friends, but in terms of real-life close friends, they only have 2, which is down from 6 some 20 years ago. Now, many people need to rediscover the power of practicing presence, of being together with other people rather than just being online. Now, over in Hebrews chapter 10 and verses 24 and 25, the Apostle Paul writes the following. He says, "Let us consider one another to provoke love and to good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching." Now, let's suppose you've got a friend or a family member that's hurting right now. They've got some bad news, bad medical news, or they've lost their job, their girlfriend's broken up with them, they found out some bad news about their husband or their child. Now, an acceptable way of showing concern that most of us would do in this age is to crank out a text or a Facebook post and say, "Hey, just thinking about you." Now, let's take it up a notch. Now, the purpose of one of these before they got turned into miniature computers is to call and talk to others by a phone call. Now, you can actually use your smartphone to talk to someone who's down via a phone call. You can ask them, "Hey, how are you going?" And you can listen to the tone of their voice. And then you can ask them some questions. And the conversation can go places that it will not go with texts when you hear the tone of their voice. Now let's say we really want to crank it up another level. Another way that we could show love to them is to actually go and see them. We could get into our cars, go across town if need be, and we could sit down with them face to face and listen to them and ask them questions. Have a cup of coffee with them, give them a hug if they need one. Now for the recipient, your presence speaks much more to them than just your posts on Facebook. Now, as many of you know, I'm involved with running our church webcast, which provides an important service for those who are sick and those in remote areas who can't get to church. Now, the webcast, however, is no substitute for being at church services, if we can make it to church. Now, while we can be fed spiritually through the messages that come through on the webcast does not give us the opportunity to serve and practice what we hear in the messages as we fellowship with one another at God's holy convocation. Now, there is power in presence and being with our brethren. Now, the cure to the selfishness which can be inflamed by modern technology is to take on the mindset or attitude of Christ, which is spoken of in Matthew 20 and verses 27 and 28. Now here in Matthew chapter 20 we read, "And whoever desires to be chief among you, let him be your servant, even as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life a ransom for many." Now many years ago, Herbert W. Armstrong, in an article called "What is Worldliness?" wrote the following: "The motion picture is not sin. It is the wrong use of this invention that becomes sin," end of quote. Now, there was a time many decades ago when dancing, liquor, a deck of cards were commonly preached against. Now, these things are not sinful or worldly. It's only the wrong use of these things which violates God's will. Now, the same principle applies with the internet and social media. So, in summary, we can avoid the negative potential problems with modern technology, such as discontentment and selfishness, by focusing on being thankful and content, and to avoid selfishness by using technology as well as other means to serve others rather than just being served.